kids on the block here. We've been operating for probably a year and a half or so, I guess. Now, the major project that we undertook last year was a year-long survey of redwood. So I've got a copy of the survey there, and I've just kind of summarised it here, and this week being what it's been, I've got to rely on notes, so I'll just try and do this as well as possible. So our aim was to just get a like a baseline sample of the bird life there. Most of the study work that's been done in redwood is in the dry rainforest area, so we thought there's already enough knowledge about that. We'll look more in the central area towards the open forests and the woodlands, which just by chance happened to coincide where most of the bike routes are going to go as well, so that was a happy coincidence. I'm talking about the area roughly from the entrance of Bridge Street down, then there's a big fire break, so-called, and then you head down from there through all the way to the picnic area at the bottom. So if anyone wants to have a look, I could show some photos later of the survey site. So this survey ran from February 2020 to February this year. Originally we had 7 sites, but in the course of the year we added 2 more sites in because these were areas we were just walking through, so we thought we might as well survey them while we're doing that as well. So all of our surveys were the 2 hectare 20-minute surveys that BirdLife recommends, and so you can do, it's almost any shape that you want to define the 2 hectares in. We ended up with 5 that were circular, so it's basically an 80-metre radius, and then 4 that were kind of elongated, roughly rectangular, so about a 400-metre length with 25 metres on either side, because that gives you the 2,000 square metres. So the benefit of doing a 2 hectare 20-minute survey is that you're tying what you see down to a very specific place and time. Now, because we had 9 survey sites, there was some possibility that birds could travel from one site to another, so we kept an eye out for that, and if we'd seen one do that, obviously we didn't count that. So we were checking out these sites once a month for over a year, so that was 7 of the sites were done right throughout the year, and the extra 2 were done, I think, for 8 months of it. So at the end of it, so just to go over some of the results, so we did 135 surveys of the 2 hectare plots. So 1,247 individual birds were counted, and remember this is just in that central area down through redwood. So we counted 85 species, but as Mick pointed out, there's a lot more in there. But we were just sampling the woodlands area mainly, and we just edged on a little bit to the dry rainforest. So some of our results, the most common birds that we saw, by a long shot, this probably won't surprise anyone, was the Lewin's honeyeaters. They turned up in 126 out of 135 surveys. Then the next most common was Rufous Whistler, 73 sites, Eastern Yellow Robin, 66, White-naped Honeyeater, 62, and the grey shrike thrush at 57 sites. So after we do these surveys, I'd go home and we were using the BirdLife app, so it all went into the National Bird Data database, and then I'd download it and just have a look at it. And one thing I noticed is that we were getting a common distribution every single time we were doing it, and it's a what's called a frequency rank distribution, or maybe you may have heard of Zipf's law. And it's basically like, if you can imagine an exponential curve that goes that way, but if you flip it around, so it's going the other way. So what that means is, and it's just a naturally occurring phenomenon you get, no one really knows why. If you get a big book like the works of Shakespeare or something and add up all the words, the most common word will appear so many times. The second most common word will be half of that. The third most common word will be 1/3 of that, and it gives you that kind of reverse exponential curve. So in ecology, that's referred to as the species abundance distribution, and what that means is that all of the available energy in that ecosystem is actually being used. So it reflects an ecosystem that's in a steady state but in a diverse state, and in other words, it's a healthy ecosystem. So the fact that we were seeing in that list, so if the Lewin's honeyeaters are the most common, the next most common birds were all around 60, and then the next most common birds were around about in 40 sites. So it wasn't something we were expecting, but it was a good way to kind of get a sense that even though there has been some disturbance in redwood, it is still a very diverse and very intact ecosystem, and a very healthy one. Now, So within those 85 species that we counted, 23 of those species that we recorded operate on the forest floor in the lower understory area. So that includes doves, whitbirds, scrub wrens, warblers, robins and finches, and all of these birds are highly impacted by any activity that goes through at that height, and obviously this is mountain bikes. So now also we then, in every single site, we saw at least one of these birds, a rufous fantail, a spectacled monarch, a black-faced monarch, and although we didn't see any black-breasted button quails, we saw the scrapings and we picked them up outside our survey sites. You've probably all seen the footage that the camera trap got with the chicks and the father with them. So we saw evidence of them, but we know they're there. So
Scott, you might just like to, for those that don't know the significance of the black-breasted button quail.
Well, it was a bird that was missing from the park. It's listed, I think it's only listed as vulnerable in Queensland, but endangered in New South Wales. And it's through the great work that FECA have done in clearing the weeds out and getting a lot more of the dry rainforest back, that these birds have come back, and now we've got evidence that they're breeding. So all four of these birds are listed as species of national environmental significance under the Environmental Protection and Biodiversity Conservation Act in 1999. So in every single survey site that we went to, we found at least one of these birds. Most sites had 2 or 3 of these species present. And so what that means in terms of the future of redwood is that regardless of what Redleaf come up with, regardless of what the council come up with, the fact that those birds are there means that no work can occur in there until it's signed off by the Federal Environment Minister. So this has to be approved. Any work in there has to be approved by the Environment Minister. And the way they work that is the Queensland Government is also going to have to do an assessment through the Coordinator General's Office to submit as well. So that's just one of the legal obstacles which I think that the council are facing. There's a whole lot of others which I'll just go through quickly. The Queensland Recreations Area Management Act, the Queensland Biosecurity Act, the Vegetation Management Act, the Nature Conservation Act, these are all state ones. And not to mention the Toowoomba Regional Council Planning Scheme Strategic Framework Section 3.4.2.1, which says you've got to preserve bushland. And it's actually in their own framework. So they're going to have to alter their own rules if they're going to do this. But look, at any rate, so these, and I think there's a photo, Anne, is that right, in there of the spectacled monarch?
Yes, we've got a black-breasted button quail.
Oh yes, and also there's a monarch there as well.
Yes.
Yeah, so everyone might like to have a look at those birds in there. So, so all 9 survey sites had at least one of these birds that are in there. And the interesting thing is, of course, we kept our surveys just to that central area, but the habitat that these birds favour is spread right throughout the entire park. So they would certainly be throughout the rest of the park as well. So, so that's a major obstacle that the government's facing. Now, just on this topic of the Daintree, so I couldn't attend the meeting with the Mayor yesterday, but I did. It was actually Pat McConnell who suggested this to me, so I did a bit more research on the Daintree comparison, and I think it's a very good one. And it was in this paper that we gave to the Mayor. So the Daintree is 120,000 hectares. Redwood is 243. The Daintree is 306 bird species. Redwood's got 158. So that tells you at 0.2% of the land size, it's got about 50% of the birds in there. And if that can't give kind of perspective to the layperson or to the councillors, then I really don't know what will. And also the Daintree has just 13 kilometres of bike trails through it, whereas that's in 120,000 acres, whereas they're looking to put 20 to 30 kilometres through just 243 hectares in Redwood. So, the interesting thing here is that there's actually an alternative, and that's to either go around the other side of that spur, continue through Jubilee, or worst case scenario is to continue along the top of Redwood. But there are very viable alternatives here. The main reason, or the main argument that they have is that they want to connect the bike trails to Whitcott because of the drop in economic activity caused by the second range crossing. And I can understand that, but you don't have to just carve up the best piece of biodiversity that we've got here to do that. There are alternatives, so it's going to be really interesting to see whether or not they take it. And as Mick suggested, we're not known for environmental tourism here. We're known for our parks and our gardens and the economy and all of that, but people know we have a great environment here, but not much is made of it. So there's a wonderful opportunity to keep Redwood as everyone calls it the jewel in the crown, and that's exactly what it is, but that could be the main focus of environmental tourism here, and Hugh's plan for an environmental tourism centre on the other side of over at Picnic Point. It's all just waiting there to happen, and it's really going to take a cultural shift from the council and from some of the staff at the council to make this happen. And I mean, look, we're doing the science, we're doing all of the right stuff. If that's not going to get them over, the next thing is the public sentiment. And I know some of you are probably aware of that video that I shot of the fish that were dying in the lake the other day. Now, I'm happy to acknowledge that the council did actually try and relocate stuff, but that was not evident to me when it happened. And the backlash from the council apparently was quite severe. And so they've engaged in a discussion on how to improve that process, but an interesting thing that I've learned out of this is how sensitive they are to reputational damage and also how powerful video is. So this is something that we certainly look at engaging further down the line if this stops being a scientific discussion and starts being one about public sentiment. And you know, they're probably forgetting, if you go to Redwood and you see families with little kids walking there, you see lots of other people that just want to take nature slowly, and as you all know, they've been forced out of Jubilee Park because it's just too dangerous. And if you go looking online, which I have, I've found one tragic death where a woman in Wales was killed by a collision with a mountain bike, and I wouldn't mind betting there are others. There's certainly a huge safety issue for people. So people who use Redwood now, where are they going to go if it's taken over by the bikes? So look, it's at the moment, I think it's sitting in the balance. I think Mayor Antonio said they're not going to make a decision until early next year, is it, when they've got the thing from Redleaf. Now, Redleaf were very interested in our report. If I don't think this would happen, but if we found that all of our data's not in there or negated by what they're saying, then you know we'll certainly be making approaches to the Minister's office anyway and letting them know about these birds, which require federal government approval before there's any action in there anyway. So look, that's probably about all I've got to say. If you want to have a look at our report, just hop on to our website, which is bsqdd.com.au. That's just a little blog we have for our BirdLife group. You can download it there. Yeah, look, I just think at the moment there's a win-win scenario that hopefully the Mayor's going to lead us to, and if he doesn't, then you know we're all quite happy to, not that we want to, but we're all prepared to start fighting it. So thank you for having me. I'd like to thank Roger Janish, who can't be here tonight. He designed our survey. He's our most experienced ornithologist in the group, and the survey work and the success of it is really down to what Roger did. And we were quite happy being led by him, I guess, and participating in that. Also, Fett and you guys, and Kay, you were a great assistance as well and participated in it a lot. I'd like to thank our BirdLife members, the DDEC, and Anne for your gorgeous photos. And maybe a few more parrots next time, but that's good. Okay, thanks very much.